I love the colorful clothes she wears and the way the sunlight plays upon her hair. I hear the sound of a gentle word on the wind that lifts her perfume through the air. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Close my eyes. She's somehow closer now. Softly smile, I know she must be kind. In her eyes, she goes with me to a blossom room. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me excitations, good vibrations, good vibrations, excitations, good vibrations, but she sends me there. Gotta keep those loving good vibrations happening with her. Gotta keep those loving good vibrations happening with her. Gotta keep those loving good vibrations.
Hello, and welcome back to the Mike Love Hate podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly
As always,
what this is.
that's exactly what this is. As always, I'm joined by my good friend Keaton Fire, and I'm Jake Del Mastro. And this is actually Cringer Commentaries.
Well done. Yeah, that's exactly what this is.
So, fuck Mike Love.
Yeah. Well,
We are returning to talk about Love and Mercy, the Brian Wilson biopic thing.
yeah.
Film.
Is this episode going to be called "Fuck Like Mike Love and Mercy"?
Oh, maybe. That would be good. Or just Love and Mike.
Fuck Love and Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, we'll get into why that we're taking that hard stance right off the top.
I mean, I don't think that's a particularly unpopular stance.
No. I think if you know anything about what we're talking about, you'll probably already know why that is. But if you don't know why, we'll get into that later. We took the soft stance last week, but we're definitely taking a hard. Well, I don't know that it was a soft stance.
I think we were pretty hard last week,
too. I don't know that it was a soft stance, but
we literally ended the podcast with "fuck Mike Love."
Yeah, no, it's true. But but the point is, we didn't go into why. which we will go into this week.
Yeah, now we're going to inform you as to why you should all hate Mike Love as well.
So that's going to be a lot of...
And some other things maybe about
Yeah,
the
we might
movie.
talk about the movie a bit.
I don't know.
But this is a
Yeah.
big, as I said last week, this is a big truth week because this is based on a true story. So that's going to absorb, I'm going to say 80% of our time today, but it's going to be worth it.
Jesus. Okay, well, we'll
It'll
see.
be worth
good.
it. Well, you'll see when we get there. So what did we talk about last week? We did the 5-minute outline for the first time.
yeah.
5-minute summary. And then we talked about like the whole kind of lead up, the production.
We talked about production and stuff. We talked about Trek,
And
etc.
and then also the whole thing about
and,
the film.
How did they shoot it?
Yeah. So this week we're going to talk about, like I said, production, music, and truth.
Sick. I mean, yeah, music, I guess there is a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, well, the music is kind of... Yeah, we'll get into it. Now, let's talk about the production a bit. Really, there's not a hell of a lot to talk about because, it's a relatively recent film. They're pretty on the ball, mostly, unless they're independent.
Yeah, I mean, I also think with recent films, like, all the interesting information has yet to come out.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
I mean, I'm sure there's...
All the juicy bits.
It's true. We just need a few more years.
People are worried about getting other people mad.
Exactly. In 20 years, people won't care, and we'll get some more juicy bits, hopefully.
Exactly.
That is if anybody cares about the movie.
Yeah, I mean, who's honestly seen this movie?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, based on the numbers we did on this last episode, I don't think very many.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of thinking a similar thing. 28.6 million worth of people, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Filmed it mostly in Louisiana and California. I mean, you can tell mostly that the California shots when it's California, particularly the outdoor shots.
Yeah, well, I mean, it very much looks like L.A.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the parts that were inside the old recording studios are, those are old recording studios in L.A.
We talked about that last
which is where they were, right?
week, which specifically I wanted to bring that up. Apparently, Bill Pullman was saying that for those like recording sessions when they were filming it, it was like a super organic thing because he wanted, obviously, as we talked about last week, they wanted to get that sort of documentary handheld feel, which is why they used those cameras.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently, he said Paul Dano basically directed those. Like they had real musicians in. Sorry, I forgot to mention that part. It's kind of important. Because they were playing they were playing real music, and I think we'll talk about that when we get to the music. I think they kind of mixed it all in together.
Yeah, maybe that's why some of the lines came off as so stupid because they were improvised.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. Yeah, exactly. Is I think
there was that other bit that I was thinking of, like the line where Carol Kay shows him the score and is like,
it's not gonna work because
it's
playing
not in the right
different
key.
keys.
Yeah, it's like, did you make a mistake here? It's like, no, man, that's what I meant to do.
It's like, no, I'm Brian Wilson.
I'm just that
I'm
smart.
a genius. It's like,
yeah, are you?
Like, what the fuck? I don't know, man.
I know. I don't know. Maybe that's what Brian Wilson actually talked like. Who knows? He's a weird
Yeah.
guy.
I mean, he does talk weirdly when you watch his interviews. But
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, like you said, Bill Pullman said he kind of just improvised those sessions, based on his attempting to get into Brian Wilson's head.
The head of...
Because I don't know if we talked so much about that last week, how the actors tried to get into the head of Brian Wilson.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about John Cusack.
We didn't talk about Paul Dano as much. Apparently it was kind of like...
Yeah, who, according to a lot of people, did the better job. But I think that most of that just has to do with the fact that he looks like Brian Wilson, whereas
I agree.
John Cusack doesn't.
It's a more recognizable period of Brian Wilson.
Yeah, period of him, yeah.
So
exactly.
Well, it's okay. So it says here that according to Paulette, Robert Yeoman was, quote, purposely kept out of the rehearsals, so he never really knew what was coming. He just had to get it.
So he could just kind of roll around there like he was doing a documentary?
Exactly. So it was like, it's kind of interesting. That's a good plan, I think. A good way of getting that.
I mean, it is and it isn't.
Huh?
It's like, if you want to make it like a documentary, yeah, I guess that's the way to do it. But I mean, like, him being able to plan his shots is, I guess, kind of useful.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he hated that. It's true. Maybe he's just like, look, I'm a professional. I know how to make it look like a fucking documentary. Don't fucking, don't...
Yeah, don't make me do this method shit.
Treat me like a fucking professional. I get that as well. I totally get that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he was like.
Yeah,
Maybe
who knows? Maybe
it.
they collaborated on that idea.
Yep.
But yeah, like most of the interesting stuff about making this movie I found had to do with just like the fact that the music was like kind of woven into like actual music, and they had kind of Paul Dano's singing woven into Brian Wilson's singing.
Yeah. Let's talk more about the music then. Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of Beach Boys music.
Yeah,
in this movie.
It's like if they didn't have that.
Yeah.
It might be an interesting movie to have a movie
would.
about Brian Wilson with no Beach Boys songs in it.
Didn't they make that Jimi Hendrix movie
Did
without
they?
any Jimi Hendrix music?
What's it called?
It's called Jimmy, All Is By My Side. So it includes songs that Hendrix performed shortly before the release of his debut album.
So...
Yeah, and it stars Andre 3000 as Jimi Hendrix.
So
2013.
I've never heard of it, so I assume it was terrible.
A year before this movie. Yeah, that's kind of an aside.
So yeah, so the film, the soundtrack was done by a guy named Atticus Ross, who has done a lot of stuff. That has been, highly touted, but not necessarily that's in my wheelhouse, if you know what I mean. Not necessarily in terms of the music. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I see a picture of him with Trent
Reznor. Like the films he's done, like Social Network, like
computer.
never a film I really got into. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, never really a film I got into. Gone Girl, never.
Right. Well,
did I just name? It's true. I did. All
David
the ones
Fincher
I just named
movies,
are David
all of
Fincher
them, I'm pretty sure.
And apparently I don't like David Fincher movies that much.
So I guess he likes to work with David Fincher. David Fincher likes to work with him.
But yeah, so he's...
I guess not.
Yeah, he likes that. But he got into apparently Love and Mercy. He was saying that like he liked the Bill Pullman's vision for how the music was going to be. And he's apparently kind of picky about, the kind of films he does.
Right.
Which is why he's, in some movies I don't like, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know. I have a feeling, though, like, with a movie like this, like, I feel like nobody's going to remember, like, the score.
Yeah, the score is not at all really that important. I mean,
it's like they're only going to remember, like, the Beach Boys music that's in it.
Yeah. And I think what's done well is that the Beach Boys music bleeds into the score really well.
Right.
Because what they do is they use the actual Beach Boy masters and they kind of like merged it in. Pollard commented on the film's use of original Beach Boy multi-track session tapes. Quote, "So much of what developed out of it was based on the ability to get into tracks. From a music perspective, certainly the ability of Atticus and I to get into the tracks and play with them was important. Also to have the music in the film was important." Okay.
So they kind of like overdubbed their own bits onto the multi-track there from the Beach Boys sessions.
They it's pretty cool.
That's kind of cool.
And I think that's how they were able to kind of merge the vocals so well, you know what I mean? Like have Paul Dano singing
definitely.
into...
Yeah, I mean, I was convinced that Paul Dano was the guy singing on those records.
Say what you will about this movie, but there were some pretty convincing musical moments. And I think probably a lot of that does have to do with, the fact that they had session musicians, actual musicians playing their instruments, like, actually. It just looks real.
Do you think John Cusack plays the piano?
No, I don't think so. That was just what I was just going to say. That was the one thing because you don't see his hands playing the piano, and they don't look like they're playing what the sound is. It's the one thing where it doesn't look like it's happening.
I was just trying to think, was Paul Dano actually playing the piano?
Paul Dano does actually play the piano. He actually learned how to play the piano, because I think it was required more of him.
for his bits.
Yeah, because he actually
Like-
had a few scenes where he had to sit at the piano and play a song.
Yeah, like when he writes Good Vibrations.
Yeah, when he writes Good Vibrations, when he gets into a fight with his dad. Yeah, and the scene where he's fighting with his dad. I think he's playing there, and he sings as well. And there was
Yeah.
that quote that you had last week where
that was by Brian Wilson, where Brian Wilson referenced John Cusack.
singing.
But I don't remember where John Cusack is singing all that much, so
No.
I think he might actually be talking about Paul Dano.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
According to Mike Love, which I know
Oh,
is
yeah?
controversial.
Well, that's very controversial.
I know. According
As Mike Love is an enemy of this podcast.
exactly, he is an enemy of this podcast. He's also invited on the podcast.
Yeah, he's invited on the podcast.
come and defend
isn't he?
himself.
Yeah, for sure.
But he apparently said that Brian Wilson went to the studio to record for this movie as well.
Okay. I mean, that doesn't necessarily jive with what Brian said.
No. It doesn't, does it?
Because Brian was like, I didn't really do anything.
No,
on
I
this
think
movie.
I think he just went. He may have gone and like listened, but I don't think. I
Yeah.
don't think he actually played.
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, okay.
Because here's what it says. Okay, it says in June 2014, Mike Love reported that Wilson had been in the studio recording music, which would be used in the film. But
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was recording unrelated music. I don't know.
yeah, who knows what he was up to, and who knows what Mike Love's talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
Mike Love is nuts.
Exactly.
People say that Mike Love is crazy.
Do people say that?
Well, that's what Mike Love was saying, remember?
Yeah. People say that Mike Love is crazy. It's like, yeah, because you fucking are rambling at the.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about Mike Love more later.
Yeah.
So should we get into the all important meat and potatoes and stew and like bones of
Yeah, sure, let's get down to it, man.
podcast?
Welcome to the truth. Where we get to the bottom of true things.
And very true things we are getting to the bottom of today. Because it's based on a true story.
Yeah, and
Brian
these
Wilson.
things that were depicted in the movie, more or less happened. Mostly.
Well, that's the plan here. We're going to go through. I've compiled an extremely basic true history of the Beach
a
Boys.
true history as opposed to a fake history.
As opposed to a dramatized history. A very brief true history of the Beach Boys in the periods that the film covers and a little bit beforehand to give you some context.
Okay.
So what's going to happen is I'm going to go through it and
We're going to talk about like where the movie differs and such.
yeah, exactly. If it does.
Oh,
So yeah, you have to stay on it. Make sure you see if you can find anything.
all right.
So we're gonna start with talking about Murray Wilson.
Yeah. Who is Murray Wilson for everybody who doesn't know? He's in the movie. Well, I mean, there's a character of him. Somebody plays
Yeah,
him.
there's an actor playing him. He's Brian Wilson's pops
Right.
And in
Brian
the
and
movie-
Carl and Dennis.
and Dennis. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the movie, he's depicted as bad guy,
Yeah, bad guy, definitely.
not a good guy.
Based on what I've read about him, I think that he's in general not a good guy.
He seems like a pretty bad guy. So he and his wife, I think it was Mary. Is it Murray and Mary Wilson?
No, Audrey.
Audrey.
I don't know I don't know where the fuck you got Mary.
Mary, probably from Murray. It's Audrey.
Yeah.
So, Murray and Audrey Wilson, their first child is Brian. Brian's the oldest. They live in a kind of a suburb of L.A., California called Hawthorne.
Right.
In Hawthorne, they build airplanes, and that's what Murray Wilson does. He builds airplanes, but he's also moonlighting as a songwriter, and he's trying to get into the music business. And he kind of peaks when he has a song played on Lawrence Welk's radio show in the early 50s.
Okay. Was it any good?
What was it called? It's called Sidestep, Two-Step or something. I think it was, pretty run-of-the-mill. Nothing particularly
Right.
interesting.
Nothing to write home about.
But yeah, he really wanted to do that, but, didn't really do an amazing job. I think he wrote one song that became a hit. I don't recall what it was called. But it was it was a short-lived hit. And, you know how hits are in the 50s.
Right.
They're churned out.
Yeah, exactly.
So it definitely seems like you beat them. That seems like that's true.
Yes. As John Cusack has that long scene
With
in the
that
movie
really uncomfortable scene.
where he discussed being hit by his father.
Apparently, Murray tied Brian to a tree as a child once. Pretty rough. And Brian was apparently deaf in one ear, which he said in that scene, I believe.
Brian is deaf in one ear.
But it was unconfirmed that it was Murray beating him. It's I watched a documentary that said that the rumor was that it was because Murray
Seems
beat
reasonable.
him. But seems reasonable, but who knows? So according to Brian's ex-wife did a pretty massive interview as well in this documentary. Her name is Marilyn Wilson.
Okay. So she was also in the film Love and Mercy.
Yeah, she appears in Love and Mercy as a character.
Once again, an actor.
Yeah, not her. The character.
Herself, but
her.
Yeah.
She's played
Yeah.
by an actress.
Yeah.
Is she play? Who's the actress that plays her? Is that?
Aaron Dark.
I don't know who that is. Yeah, apparently he always just made Brian incredibly insecure. She talks about their relationship quite a bit, which we'll touch on a little bit more. So in the movie, I don't know if they talk actually how much they talk about it in the movie, but it was apparently Brian's kind of motivation that got everything going. Like he would listen to harmonies, and play them on the piano and pick apart, what all the pieces were and teach them to the family.
Right.
And then eventually you have Mike Love, because he's their cousin. He gets involved in the whole music making thing, and they get their friend from high school, Al Jardine. And then there you go. That you have the original Beach Boys lineup.
Sick.
Yeah. According to the documentary I watched again, parts of it were a bit over dramatic.
Sorry, what was the documentary you watched called again?
What was it called? It's just called. I think it was just called a Brian Wilson biography. It was an A&E documentary.
Right. Okay.
It said that it was their mother who said that they needed to include Dennis in the band early on. So they made him the drummer.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. I know, right? Why is it always the drummer?
I don't know. You can count to 4. You can play the drums.
Yeah, you can count to 4. You can play the drums. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bing, bang, boom, bong. And then apparently he was the actual only surfer in the band.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear if you just take a look at Brian Wilson that he doesn't surf.
Yeah. Can you imagine him on a surfboard?
I could. I can because I've seen it.
Well, other than in that, no, what you saw was Dewey Cox on a surfboard.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what you saw. You better check again.
I have seen him on a surfboard, and he does not look very comfortable.
Well, we'll talk about that. Are you talking about that video?
Yeah.
That comes up later. We'll talk about that. According to Brian Wilson's induction speech at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which if you've seen the video,
the infamous Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction of the Beach Boys.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with this video, you know Mike Love fucking ruined it because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But during his speech, he says that Brian says that him and Mike wrote the first single that the Beach Boys ever recorded while their parents were out of town for the weekend, and they left them emergency money, but then which they used to rent instruments. And then Dennis suggested they wrote a song about surfing because he surfed. So they wrote a song, and guess what it was called?
Was it called Surfing?
That's exactly what it was called. And they recorded it, and they pressed a single under a relatively small label because, to Murray's credit, he was at least pretty supportive in this,
Yeah. I mean, he certainly seemed to be able to, help them put everything together early on, you know what
Exactly. Like, he, who knows what his motivations were, but he definitely, he put the instruments in Brian's hands, and, he got them to a studio to record a single, so... He's a complicated figure. He's more than just a villain. He's more than just an enemy in Brian Wilson's way.
Yeah, he's not Mike Love.
Precisely. So, the single wasn't... Surfing, I don't think, did amazingly, but I think it did surprisingly well, considering they're nobody, right? And when they heard their song on the radio, apparently Carl got so excited that he threw up.
Wait, what?
Look up.
How does that
I don't know.
happen?
Have you ever seen That Thing You Do? That's that.
Wait, what is that?
That Tom Hanks
No, I don't
movie
think so.
about the one-hit wonder band called The Wonders.
Oh no, I actually haven't seen that movie.
I fucking
No.
love that movie. There's a scene where they hear their music on the radio for the first time, and I think it's based off of this story. Anyway,
I feel like Tom Hanks came up in one of these episodes because he was gonna be in something, but ended up not being in it because of
That Thing
movie.
You Do. Yeah, it's definitely come up before. But yeah, basically they blew up and recorded just a ridiculous amount of music and records. Mostly about surfing at first, yeah. And it's all
And
Brian
summer,
Wilson. Huh?
And women.
And cars.
And cars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So
And that's kind of where we're at in the beginning of the film, right?
basically, yeah. At this point, Brian Wilson is he moves out at 21. He moves out of his house. The Beach Boys are becoming a huge thing. He kind of he meets Marilyn. Basically, the thing that changed everything for him came in 1963 when a song by the name of "Be My Baby" came out.
We'll make them turn their head every place we go. So won't you please be my new baby? Say you'll be my darling. Be my baby now. I'll make you
Which is
Ah,
a great
yes.
song. And that song was produced by a psychopath by the name of Philip Spector.
Brian was a big fan of Phil Spector, right?
Phil changed Brian's life. Yeah, Brian was young and impressionable. Phil was also young, but Phil was not impressionable, I don't think. Phil was the impression.
Yeah.
So he basically just started trying to be Phil Spector. Because he had access, because he had made so many records, already charted a bunch of times. He had the opportunity to hire all the same musicians as Phil, the Wrecking Crew people. He walked into the music industry, and just his talent just got him there. This whole Phil Spector thing seems to kind of have lit a fire underneath him, because the Beach Boys released 4 albums in 1964. So this is really where that...
Jeez, I don't know how you have time to do that
Exactly.
shit. And, tour and shit.
Well, because Brian hated touring.
So, in the movie, they talked about having fired Murray Wilson. Did that happen at this point yet?
That hasn't happened yet.
Oh, okay.
Not quite yet. Apparently, he heard tales of debauchery on their tours.
Murray
Yeah,
did?
Murray did, and the documentary described it as heavy drinking and venereal infection.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So, wait. How do we all know that this documentary is any more reliable than this film?
Because a lot of it is cross-referenced. Only some of the more dramatic things that is truly from the documentary. Because I also looked at a book as well, and some articles, quotes from actual people. You know what I mean? Like people they're interviewing.
Right, because they were in the documentary or whatever.
But who knows if those people are telling
Yeah.
the truth? So
I mean, Mike Love claims that he wrote songs.
Anyone can say
so,
anything. I wrote California Girls. I just said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. It's not true,
did.
but I said it.
Mike Love's probably going to sue you.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe you should cut that out. Yeah, Murray just is, essentially he's like, you guys are debaucherous. Even though you're all adults, I'm your tour manager. I'm going to take over.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, he was a piece of work. Murray, and we'll talk about that right now. So, do you want to play the clip?
Brian, your voice is shrilling through everybody. Carl, we can't hear Carl. We can hear Dennis, but we can't hear Mike. We can't hear Mike, and we can hardly hear Al.
Okay, now wait a second. Me?
Can we hear a chord? Just a chord like we used to. When you used to sing clear records, okay? Let's go. Brian, I'm a genius too. Let's go, huh?
1, 2, 3. She was gonna be my wife and I was gonna be her man.
Yeah, so that was a little bit from a recording session. Like, do you know what song that was? I guess it was from, what was the song, Rhonda?
Rhonda, yeah.
Yeah.
There might be more. Love you, Rhonda. Love me, Rhonda. Something like that.
Yeah. And then, basically there's this whole clip that's out there of Murray Wilson just in a Beach Boys recording session. Just clearly nobody else wants him to be there, and he's just trying to give pointers to the band, which they don't particularly care for.
Yeah, they're just like one of the great quotes from Brian. What is it? He says like, "We like our sessions to be relaxed environments."
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's like yelling at them, being like, you know, you're flat. It's like, okay, what? You
Yeah.
got a lot of money. You know what you're doing? Like, I'm a genius too, Brian.
Yeah.
So that kind of behavior pushes Brian to fire Murray as the manager,
Yeah.
which is probably a good call.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so far I think he could have got them too.
But that apparently devastated Murray, and then things get interesting because this is summer of 1964.
Is that where the movie is?
Basically, yeah. The movie starts with something we're about to talk about in a second. But who comes to the States in 1964?
Is it the Beatles?
Yeah. Basically, he gets into a musical fist fight with Paul McCartney. And he said, quote, "I was so jealous of the Beatles." So he just basically starts, trying to write better shit than the Beatles, trying to be more interesting than the Beatles. He
Right.
gets-
So were the Beatles at all aware or caring at all about this, or was it just a one-way thing?
I think at first it was just a one-way thing, but I don't think they really cared until after Pet Sounds, But I
Okay.
can't speak for Paul McCartney.
Yeah, I don't really know. I
Um,
can't get inside the mind of Paul McCartney.
no. So then in November of 1964, Brian, he's 22 years old at this point. He has a panic attack on a plane to Australia.
And this is in the film.
No.
Oh, there's another panic attack on a plane.
This is the first one. The second one is in the film.
I
Yeah.
see.
So maybe they merged them both into one. They were going to Australia, and he got the pilot to wire his 16-year-old girlfriend Marilyn that he loved her, and then they got engaged. And when I heard that, I was like, 22 years old, 16-year-old girlfriend. They've been together for a while already. That's really weird.
It was the 1960s. I think it was a little bit
Exactly. That
different
was
then.
my second. That was I guess it was different times. It wasn't like some of the other stories I've read where it's a lot more clandestine, creepy shit. He would go and stay with her and their
Right, yeah.
parents and he said he loved going and staying with them apparently because he felt like part of their family. And I think they're probably a nicer family
Right.
environment, judging by how much he
more than
enjoyed it.
his.
So
Yeah.
he has a panic attack on a plane. They get married in 1964. Then here we are in the movie in 1965 on a plane to Texas. He has another panic attack, and this one they kind of describe as like a mental breakdown. Because when the plane landed, he called his mother and he made his mother drive to come pick him
Oh,
up.
okay.
So basically, that's when he was in the movie. He was like, "No, I'm not gonna go on tour."
Right.
Al and Mike were sad about it. Apparently, Dennis was angry and threw furniture.
This is because he told them he didn't want to go on tour.
Yeah, that he wasn't going to tour anymore.
I don't know. They seem pretty cool with it in the movie.
Yeah, they did seem extremely cool with it. They were like, "I don't know about this, man." Yeah, Dennis throwing furniture. It was not in the movie. But apparently, Carl was the only one that was truly on board with it.
Right. I don't know. Carl seemed pretty
but-
chill.
He seems pretty cool, yeah. But you know who was not happy
Mike
about
Love.
Well, yeah, Mike Love was not happy, but Murray Wilson was also not happy.
Wasn't? Why does he give a fuck, man? He's not working with them anymore.
I know. Well, why does he give a fuck, and why would Brian give a fuck about what Murray
Him
gives a fuck?
not giving a fuck or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, according to Marilyn, they would drive up to Hawthorne and Brian would play Marie songs.
Yeah, so they kind of showed a little bit of that in the movie.
Exactly, the God Only Knows scene. And I think
Yeah, and he's like, this song fucking sucks.
yeah, exactly. Like, I don't like it. So what? Give you
Go
my
home,
opinion.
yeah. Like, get out of my house.
If you're gonna raise your voice in my house,
yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's apparently kind of true. And then, so what's also true is the elder Wilsons divorced in 1965, which Marie did not take well as well, which I think they show a bit of in the movie, but
Yeah, well, they allude to it. Yeah.
According to one of a guy, so this could be very much not true because this is just according to a guy who was interviewed in the movie, named Dave Nolan, who was just credited as friend.
Oh, friend of the Beach Boys.
So he said there was an argument where Brian ripped Murray's glasses off of his face because Murray was like, "You'll never be a man," and
jeez.
Brian ripped his glasses off his face and broke them and was like, "I'm more of a man than you'll ever be," and ran off.
Wow, pretty intense
So
shit.
what was if you can remember in the movie, what was the most like outlandishly pathetic thing that Murray did? Can you recall?
I don't know, just kind of showing up at the Beach Boys recording
And what did
session.
he do?
He played them a record by some band that he was
And go
working
on.
with. Well, he just shows up and then he's like, check out this shit. Better than your fucking Beach Boys music.
Yeah, he shows up like he's hot shit with a record that sounds exactly like, the Beach Boys' early music. And he's like, this is going to sell 1 million records. So if this is what a hit record sounds like, Brian. I don't know if that interaction actually happened.
Oh, yeah?
But what did happen is Murray...
Well, we certainly know that he dropped in on their recording studios.
Well, we certainly
in the
know
recording
that.
sessions, right? Yeah.
And we also certainly know that Murray began managing a group called the Sunrays.
Yeah.
Which is led by a Murray apologist named Rick Henn.
Okay.
Rick Henn is the guy who was like, every time they wanted like a pro Murray opinion in the documentary, they would cut to him.
Right, and Mike Henn would say something pro Murray.
And he was the one who said like, no, I don't think he was jealous. No, he certainly wasn't jealous of...
I think Mike Love also had some pro Murray opinions.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. So here's what Wikipedia says about the Sunrays. The Sunrays were an American band from Pacific Palisades, California. The group was led by singer-songwriter / drummer Rick Henn, who was a friend of the Beach Boys member Carl Wilson. In 1964, Murray Wilson, the father of Brian, Carl, and Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, started managing them and changed their name to the Sunrays. Eddie Medora switched from the saxophone to the rhythm guitar. This is hilarious. Stephen O'Reilly, who played lead guitar and sang, left the band when, quote, "I Live for the Sun" began to break, saying, quote, "I don't want to be in the group anymore. I think I can make it on my own." Needless to say, Steve O'Reilly does not have his own Wikipedia page.
I was really hoping that he later went on to become like, some really successful artist.
Yeah.
It's like, and you actually know him as like, I don't know, some pseudonym.
No, unfortunately not. And apparently they toured the United States and opened for the Beach Boys. It's so pathetic.
Yeah, that's pretty pathetic.
So that's where Murray kind of goes by the sidelines for a while now.
Right, he does his own thing. Yeah, I mean, I feel like in the movie, like, they certainly emphasized certain things. Like, Murray kind of took a backseat in this film.
How so?
Because I think they really wanted to focus on, like, the stuff with Eugene Landy.
Yeah, yeah. They more alluded to the stuff about his father. They didn't really get into it as much.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was fairly prominent in the early bit. But yeah, they didn't really go into it.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot.
Whereas, like, somebody like Mike Love, came off as a dick in the film, but in real life he was an even bigger dick.
Yeah, he was even worse than he came off in the film. So far we're pretty accurate,
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, certainly. I don't think there's any outright fabrication so far.
According to Marilyn Wilson, the scene where he does LSD for the first time, where the guy who looks like Charles Manson gives him the LSD.
So we don't know if he got LSD from Charles Manson. It's possible.
It is possible. I don't think he got his first hit of LSD from Charles Manson. I don't think that's possible.
Okay.
Because I
Right.
don't think he had met Charles Manson at this point.
So, but according to his wife, he did, in fact, do LSD and then say he saw
Yeah,
God.
he like woke her up in the morning being like, I saw God, and then started like uncontrollably weeping. She described it exactly like it played out in the movie.
Mm.
So I think they may have used that interview for the movie. So Brian began recording Pet Sounds, and the Beach Boys
Yep.
started touring Japan. So, again, all accurate. According to Brian,
Mhm.
Mike was not down
with
him.
Pet Sounds. Because Mike's a fucking
With the
piece of
music
shit.
at all.
Doesn't like fun music.
According to Brian, he said they shook hands, and he said he's like, you get to make one album where you explore. This is what Mike Love said to Brian. You get to explore for one album. And Brian said that album was Pet Sounds. And Mike Love referred to it as ego music. Fuck Mike Love.
He's not even a Wilson,
Not
man.
even a Wilson. The movie does kind of make the dueling interests slightly more sympathetic.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, they kind of talk about how Pet Sounds didn't sell that well or whatever, right? Which I don't think
And
it
it is
did.
like the other guys are in the band, but at the same time, it seems like every Beach Boy except for Mike Love kind of acknowledged the fact that they were just along
Yeah.
for the ride.
Every Beach Boy except for Mike Love was into it.
Well, not
right.
even, yeah, well, they were into the music, but they were also just like they knew they were just along for the ride, with Brian Wilson. I don't think
Yeah,
they had their
yeah.
own identity, and I don't think they really wanted even. I mean, I can't speak for them again. Obviously, I'm no expert, but from what I gathered, it just seems like they
Mhm.
were just willing to go along with what Brian wanted, whereas Mike had a different
Yeah.
opinion. So a lot of his lyrics at this point were written by a guy named Tony Asher.
Yeah, so Tony Asher wasn't really in the movie at all, was he?
No,
Which I thought was really weird.
I think they kind of merged his character with Van Dyke Parks.
Right, but Van Dyke Parks, who barely gets referred to in the movie, actually, although is a character is in it of him,
Yeah.
is doesn't show up until later on in the movie. The way it kind of works, it's it kind of implied that Brian came up with all the lyrics himself, right?
It certainly did imply that.
Yeah.
And I think there is this kind of thing in music where people don't like to let on when people don't write the lyrics because that's a lot of the time that's what people connect to the music with.
Right. Well, I mean,
You
it's
know.
not that Brian didn't not write the lyrics; he just didn't write all of them. So
Um,
it's just there was a guy that was pretty important to making this album, and he basically wasn't shown in the movie, which I think is kind of weird.
It's incredibly weird, and it's because
Yeah.
they it just goes to show the value they put on that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, according to Tony Asher, Mike Love would say stuff like, why are we recording this stupid songs during vocal sessions,
Well, yeah, which he did in the film.
in the film.
He's like, let's all hold on to our egos. Is this a drug song?
Yeah, exactly. And apparently Asher was in the studio and he would say stuff like that. And Asher was like, what? I don't need this. Why am I here? In the interview. So it's
Yeah, exactly.
a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, why are you here, Mike?
So yeah, Pet Sounds, as we saw in the movie, in real life, also did not do very well.
Yeah.
But basically 2 months or 2 or 3 months after it comes out, Capitol Records panics and puts out a best of.
Right, but they also I don't know if Pet Sounds is over by the time they start working on Good Vibrations, but that also came around around
Good
the same
Vibrations?
time, didn't it? And that was a massive hit, as
Well, that
is
took
shown in the film.
of months to record.
Yeah, because of the
Yeah.
cellos and shit.
So the A&E documentary, this is again why I'm quoting the A&E documentary, because this is just a quote from the documentary, not from anybody in it. They said Brian was using, quote, amphetamines and hashish while he was working on Good Vibes. And they also,
The kind of things that give you good vibes, I guess.
yeah, apparently the mixture of hashish and amphetamines gives you good vibes, apparently.
All right.
That's not an endorsement from Crane Kick Commentary
No.
to go out and
No,
do
definitely
amphetamines and
not.
hashish. I do endorse hashish, though. You should go out and do some of that. Apparently, the sandbox thing was true as well. The piano in the sandbox, according to this documentary.
Yeah,
just
but
find
did he
that
come up
hilarious.
with Good Vibrations while just playing that random chord progression and Mike's Love's that's pretty good?
They did not mention any of that, but apparently,
And what about dogs? Because they were talking about dogs being able to feel vibrations. Is that how they came up with it?
I don't know that that's how they came up with it, but he did have a lot of dogs around, so
Right.
that part is true. So
And they could feel the vibrations.
they didn't mention any of that, but what is true is apparently Tony Asher wrote the lyrics, but Mike Love didn't like them, so he wrote new ones.
Fucking asshole.
Fucking asshole, but you know.
Wait, so Mike Love wrote the Good Vibrations lyrics, did he?
Well, I don't know
Really?
if that's what ultimately was released, but when Mike Love first saw Tony Asher's original lyrics, he rewrote some of them because he didn't like them. So I don't know if he rewrote all of them, but
Okay.
he rewrote some of them. So then, obviously, Good Vibrations does extremely well, as you mentioned. And then that's when Van Dyke Parks comes into the picture because they start working on Smile
Yeah. So this is the album that never gets
Exactly.
finished.
at that
Or
time.
at that time. Yeah.
Brian, this was just a weird little bit.
Which isn't shown in the movie.
in the movie, but they had photographs of it. So apparently Brian got like obsessed with health, and he opened a health store on the Sunset Strip.
Which is especially strange because he was not a healthy person
No.
at this time.
He's like on tons of drugs, but he got obsessed with like nutrition and health.
He's on tons of drugs, is obese, and
And apparently, according to one
Yeah.
person who was being interviewed, he would sometimes work at the store,
that would be really weird. Just going
going
to
to buy
buy
supplements
like,
or whatever.
I don't know what
fucking-
you're buying. And Brian Wilson's there. Be like, man, these will give you good vibrations.
I hope it was called Good Vibrations.
I hope so.
But yeah, things were getting kind of, intense at this point. They would like only record several bars at a time. Apparently Brian told one of his friends he wanted him to go get into a bar fight so he could record it because he thought that would be funny to have on the record. And the guy was like, "Oh, what? But what if it
Yeah.
goes too far? What if I get hurt?" And Brian was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that."
Did he by any chance record any Barnyard Animals or didgeridoos?
I don't know about
this point?
didgeridoos, but there were definitely some barnyard animals. I think you could even hear it
Oh.
on the record.
Yeah, you can.
If you listen to the new Smile, that's recently been released. So it's basically at this point that he starts going kind of off the deep end and full Dewey Cox, walk hard, Brian Wilson.
Yeah, it's sort of like 1,000 didgeridoos. Gotta record this goat.
Yeah, exactly. And even that, that clip with the fireman's helmet, we mentioned it last week, which was
Yeah, that was real,
step-
eh? I found pictures of it.
yeah, there's a whole video of it, and it's like they recreated
Yeah.
it. And we were talking about how it was a step too far.
But no, it was real.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems like something Dewey Cox would do.
Exactly, which is why that movie's so good.
Yeah.
But apparently, according to one of the people interviewed, he began to think his house was bugged by both Murray and Phil Spector.
Okay. Yeah, actually, he does talk about Phil Spector listening to him.
Yeah, and frankly,
Oh, yeah,
who
Phil
knows?
Spector. That seems like, something Phil Spector might do. Seems beyond Murray.
Seems like something he would want to do, but wouldn't have the means.
Yeah. I think that's well
But Phil
within
Spector-
Phil Spector's, abilities to get that done.
Yeah, Phil Spector's like, I want to know what Brian Wilson's up to.
Yeah. Surprised he didn't think
He's
Paul
stealing my
McCartney
sound.
was listening to him or whatever.
Paul McCartney's all the way overseas.
I don't know. He could arrange that.
That's true. You could set it up. He's Paul friggin' McCartney.
Yeah, exactly.
And apparently, because of this, he did have meetings in the pool, according to the same person. So it could not be true, but this person who,
Well, I think there are enough people that would be able to corroborate it. You know what I mean?
yeah. So kind of in order to deal with this, his kind of deteriorating state, instead of getting him mental health support, they were like, okay, well, Brian doesn't really want to leave his house, so let's build a studio in his living room,
Yeah.
which I think was the wrong decision.
Maybe.
Because I think Brian Wilson, it seems like he was trying to pull away.
Brian was?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they just built a studio in his living room.
I'm surprised that's not something that Brian did on his own.
Yeah, well, it seems like it was Carl's idea,
Right.
because he wanted to help Brian out, and he thought it would be easier for him. But what Brian is sort of just sequestered himself in the bedroom and would not come down unless he heard something he really liked, and even then, who knows if he would
Right.
appear. So this is he's getting super eccentric here, and this is the Manson era.
So this is while they're recording Smile.
Yeah, this is kind of just as Smile's falling apart, basically.
Right.
and getting kind of pushed aside. Yeah, so this is when Dennis Wilson meets Manson, and Manson starts hanging out with them, and they record a Manson song.
Was Brian Wilson involved in this song?
I don't think he was. I think he was sequestered in his bedroom.
Right.
I think this is when they were a bit desperate for material because Brian Wilson
Like,
was...
is Dennis the one that was hanging out with
Yeah.
Charles Manson?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis was like, yeah, I met this cool guy Charlie, you know, he's gonna fucking sing a song for us.
Yeah, he's gonna listen to this far out tune.
Yeah,
this Guru wrote.
He's talking about opening my third eye and shit, and it's good shit, you know?
Yeah, so eventually, yeah, like I said, he sequestered himself in his bedroom. I think he's hiding from the studio in his living room.
Yeah, and Phil Spector.
And Phil Spector. And then in 1969, Murray sold the Beach Boys publishing rights. So I think in the film, this happens a little earlier.
Kind of makes it seem like it happens earlier while they're doing Good Vibrations. In terms of the timeline, that's not accurate. But I guess maybe they just wanted to put it in the movie, but the movie wasn't actually covering that later period. Or middle period, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think... Yeah, exactly. So they sold the publishing rights for $700,000.
Right.
But yeah, so this, like, totally fucked Brian up, like, really badly. He apparently didn't speak for 3 days afterwards. And was just, like...
Very not happy
continued
with
to
it.
become a recluse.
Right.
And then Murray died in 1973. And I think that was kind of the catalyst for the bed phase.
Right.
The infamous bed phase.
Yeah, which is kind of not necessarily dramatized in this movie, but is referred to heavily.
Yeah, well, there's that. They do kind of have it in
Yeah.
that. I think that last scene is supposed to be
The
it.
2001
you know what I mean?
scene.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because she comes to him and is like, you know,
Yeah.
oh, your father.
Yeah,
You know, yeah, he had a heart attack, and then there's the 2001 scene.
exactly. Well, the things happened, but the timelines don't necessarily match up. Which, you know, I can understand. Just because, like, you know, trying to get in all the pieces you want, but then trying to make it so that it's not too long, right?
It's an understandable
Yeah.
artistic license moment. Apparently, when he would lie in bed, I don't know if I kind of remember that song actually playing while he was lying in bed. But apparently, when he would lie in bed, he would play the song "Be My Baby," which is what got him into Phil Spector. He would play it up to 100 times a day because he had a record player just next to his bed.
Jeez.
And he would play just.
I
over
wonder
and
if he
over
had to
again.
replace the record because it wore out.
Yeah, and I don't know if he did that. That was just, that was one of his friends.
That's an
saying
anecdote.
that.
Yeah.
So I doubt he did it for the whole fucking 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
Is it
but-
true that he was eating, like, fucking steaks only?
Well, it seems that he was eating that. One of his daughters told a story where she was like one of the only like family dinners I remember us having. He came down, and my mother had given him a steak, and it was on the plate in front of him, but he didn't have any cutlery, so he was like, Marilyn, can you get me some cutlery? And then she said by the time she got back with the fork, the steak was gone, and he was off playing the piano.
Jeez.
So he goes full Jim Morrison.
I mean, he really just goes Brian Wilson.
Yeah, he goes full Brian Wilson, and his substance abuse issues get pretty bad.
Yeah, like, from what I understand, the 70s, which is the period that's not really covered in the
Yeah.
film, were really rough for
That's
Brian.
kind of where we are right now, because Murray died in 1973, and between 1973 and 1975, that's when he's in bed, and things are just really, really bad. So in 1975, that's when Marilyn gets in contact with Dr. Eugene Landy, who
Right.
had worked with Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper, really?
Yeah.
So Eugene Landy is obviously one of the pivotal
Yes.
characters in this film.
And he has now entered the scene in reality. Basically, there's an interesting... I don't know if this is exactly made clear in the film, but he basically has two run-ins with Landy.
Yeah.
And this is the
Yeah,
first
he does.
one, which is 1975.
And so it seems like things are kind of, like, working a little bit with Landy at first, right?
Well, yeah, it's hard to say from in a retrospective way, just because of how much more we
Yeah,
know
exactly.
about mental health and substance abuse than we
Yeah.
did then. But back in the 70s, Dr. Landy got him back on tour in 6 months. Got him clean and lost 20 pounds, and he was back on tour, is what they said.
Well, I mean, so he stopped doing drugs and shit for a while at least.
And then they made that SNL thing that we were talking about earlier.
Are you Brian Wilson?
Yes, I am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Wilson. We're from the Highway Patrol, Surf Squad.
Hello.
Brian, we have a citation here for you, sir, under Section 936A of the California Catch a Wave Statute. Brian, you're in violation of paragraph 12. Failing to surf, neglecting to use a state beach for surfing purposes, and otherwise avoiding surfboards, surfing, and surf.
Surfing? I don't want to go surfing. Now, look, you guys, I'm not going. You get your hair wet, you get sand in your shoes. Okay, I'm not going.
Come on, Brian. Let's go surfing now. Everybody's learning how. Come on a safari with us. Come on.
Let's go. All right. Okay, let's go. Let's go surfing. Come on.
Yeah, so that was around that
That
time?
was 1976, which is just after he not just after, but after he had formed a bond with Landy. Apparently, he only went in the water because he was developing a serious fear of water at this point. He only went in the water because he had a signed note from Dr. Landing that said, "You won't drown, Brian," signed Dr. Landy.
But yeah, so this is the one and only instance that I'm aware of where I've ever seen Brian
me
Wilson
as well.
surf.
That's it. And it was involving Dan Aykroyd, was making him do it at gunpoint, so... I mean, that's reasonable.
I'd do anything, Dan. I could tell me to do.
Yeah, well, especially if he had you at gunpoint.
Yeah, exactly.
He's crazy, man. He'll use that thing.
Exactly.
So by this time, Landy was apparently making $20,000 a month.
Yeah.
Which is quite a bit. And he had a lot of control, as you can imagine from the whole signed note. So Marilyn fired him because he was
charging too much.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And then the band kind of just forced Brian back into the studio, it seems. Like, they just kind of needed him desperately.
Right. Because, naturally, Mike Love can't do it. Get anything done on
well,
his
and they
own,
signed, around this time, they signed a contract. I believe it was Warner Bros. That one of the deals of the contract was that Brian Wilson was going to write 70% of the music.
Right, because everybody knows that the Brian Wilson stuff is the best.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what everybody wants to hear.
Well, we're not going to sign the Beach Boys if Mike Love's writing all the fucking music. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's like everything sounds like fucking Kokomo.
Yeah, it's going to sound like shit. So they force him kind of back in the studio and back onto the road, and he's not into it. And he fell off the deep end again. He relapsed, and it was really, really bad. And apparently Marilyn says the last straw was when he, apparently in a stupor, he offered one of their daughters drugs.
I can imagine how that would pretty much end it.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad stuff. So at this point, the band was like, all right, well, it's either, you got to get help or you can't be a Beach Boy. You have to take a break.
Yeah, so they call up Landy again, right?
Because apparently, he's the only one who's shown any ability to
sort of get a handle on
to
Brian,
reach him.
right?
Yeah. So Landy takes over again in the early 1980s. And Marilyn.
But Landy, at this point, he charges even more money, right? He,
it's more. Yeah.
Gets him to sign over some agreements that put him in a lot of control, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Marilyn admitted, like, she's gone at this point. Like, she left, but she said he was the only one who helped. And
yeah, and I think even actually, like, if you listen to what a lot of things that Brian has said, like, even more recently, like, he himself seems very conflicted about.
Absolutely.
About Landy. Although, like, it should be like clear that, like, although Landy managed to get him clean and everything, like, Landy didn't know what the fuck he was doing.
That specifically in a second. But 3 months out in the early 80s, so 3 months after Landy's on Eugene's on the scene again, Brian's on the road again, which to me seems extremely quick. Both times it seems like the turnaround is really quick. And then tragically, this is 1983 when Dennis Wilson dies in a scuba diving accident, which I think really fucked up Brian Wilson.
Yeah, definitely. Like, he mentions it, like, in one of the very early scenes of the movie. Like, when he's first meeting Melinda. And this is the part of the film that I think is probably a little less accurate, but mostly because there's just kind of less people to corroborate things with.
Less information.
Yeah, well, no, there's information, but it all comes from a few sources. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's all he said, she said. It all basically at this point, everything is either coming from Brian Wilson, who's unreliable.
Yeah, or from Landy, which is also probably unreliable since he has potential legal.
He's got a clear agenda, and then basically the only other sources.
Yeah, only other source. Yeah,
Melinda.
Melinda is one of the big sources for this movie specifically. While there have been some concerns that she's not always the most reliable person.
Yeah,
either.
I mean, like, who knows? We're never, like, I think the degree that he was portrayed in the movie,
Yeah.
we're never going to know if it was that intense.
Yeah.
Or that even necessarily directly nefarious, per se.
What?
Just the, screaming in his face when he's eating a hamburger. We don't know
Landy?
how...
Well, I mean...
Well,
yeah,
hold
I
on.
mean, we know it was nefarious because, the law got involved and,
Landy was charged with the point, what I was getting at,
Yeah.
is Landy was
Yeah.
charged with malpractice.
Yeah,
2
exactly.
counts, specifically. One was improper prescription of drugs, and that he
Yeah.
denied. And then the other one, I forget what the other one was, but it was a slightly lighter one that he pled guilty to.
Right. But, he was certainly abusing, doctor-patient privilege, right?
Exactly. So he shouldn't have been a doctor. My point is just, the degree to which his abuse, his actual physical and mental
Yeah.
abuse,
Right.
is
yeah.
debatable.
Well, according to Melinda, it was actually worse than that, than what was shown in the film.
And I think
Which, yeah.
there was an interview with Brian Wilson even where he said the first scenes, when he first saw scenes in the film with,
Yeah, that he was very scary.
yeah, he found him terrifying, and he it was visceral. Which I can see is if that's the experience you had with an actual person, and then you're seeing it on a film, it's kind of traumatizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's not your experience, So yeah, just to finish it off, in 1984, Landy, I don't think it was just Landy. I think the movie makes it sound like it was just Landy, but it was Landy and a few other people diagnosed him as schizophrenic, but obviously it was at Landy's, pushing.
So he wasn't actually a schizophrenic. That was not his
later.
condition. That was an incorrect
That was later
diagnosis, right?
Overturned, as it says in the
Right.
movie.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, so he was constantly monitored, and he was they would actually videotape him all the time, and screen his calls.
Yeah.
And then he met Melinda Ledbetter. We were kind of talking about the details last week. We didn't have the exact timeline, but he met her in 1986. So this is kind of interesting. So he meets her in 1986. During this period, Landy gets Brian a solo deal and makes his first record with him. So Landy is with him the whole time he's making the Love and Mercy record, which comes out in 1988.
Yeah, it is interesting that they don't really talk about that music in this movie.
Yeah, I
even
found that
though
extremely
this movie
interesting.
is named after that
That's right.
song.
They don't have that at all.
So I don't know. He's supposed to be recording something with Landy at some point in this film, but it's not really clear as to what that is and if that's this.
And it is this, because that's what they did, right?
Or if it was something that he was recording that never happened, right? Never ended up.
Well, right.
getting
I see what you're
released,
saying.
right? Or
Yeah.
or it's not a clear. The way I first assumed that it was when I saw the movie is that record had come out before what was happening in the film.
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but in real life, I am sure that Love and Mercy, the record, comes out.
Wait, is the album called Love and Mercy?
1988. Huh?
Is the album called Love and Mercy? I thought that was just the song. The record is called Brian Wilson, isn't it?
It's just called Brian Wilson. There you go.
Yeah. The record is called Brian Wilson by Brian Wilson.
So Brian Wilson by Brian Wilson comes out in 1988.
1988.
And then same year, Landy was charged with malpractice and lost his license.
Right. Okay. So that would track that is what they're recording.
Yeah.
but then it kind of makes it imply that, like, you know, they got rid of him during that.
Yeah, it kind of implies that it kind of taints that record a little bit, that movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, whether or not all the timelines once again match up properly, who knows?
Yeah, exactly. My kind of overall, this has all been the truth. And the final, conclusion is that, you know,
mostly true.
biases aside, like, shockingly true.
Yeah, no, like, more true than I expected when I saw it. Mostly because it was, like, you know...
Hammy as hell.
Some of the stuff seemed a bit outlandish to believe. You know what I mean?
And honestly, even, like, specifically the thing about his father and the sun rays, I didn't think that was true. Like... I thought that was,
but that's 100%
yeah.
true.
I thought that that was a bridge too far. Like Murray's character is just almost too pathetic to believe in some ways. You know,
I mean, for me, the part that I found most weird was like, you know, just like Melinda's character and how she, you know, behaves in a lot of circumstances, not how you would expect a normal person to behave.
Yeah, you mentioned that last week.
Yeah, and you know. I just also think that it's notable that she was the primary source for this film.
So you just find it kind of questionable?
Yeah, I mean, not that any, like, particular event that happened in the movie isn't true, but just, you know, the way that she's written just seems really kind of weird.
Yeah, well, she's written, like, what's her motivation, you know?
Exactly. Like, she just kind of, like, dives headfirst into, like, this whole Brian thing, you know, very quickly. And, you know, maybe that was just to, like, expedite the plot. But, you know, who knows? If somebody approached me like that while I was at work and just, you know, while I was selling Cadillacs and, you know, just acted, like, really bizarre, you know, my first reaction would not be to, like,
that's
give
true,
him
but
my
you're
phone
not married
number.
to Brian Wilson, so there's probably a reason for that.
No, I'm not.
You know, you're not
No,
the kind
I
of
guess
person
not.
who would do that. So maybe if you were, you'd be married to Brian Wilson right now. You need to be more open to strangers acting weirdly at your job. Do you ever? How many strangers do you have at your place of work?
No one, basically.
You never encounter outsiders, huh?
Yeah, almost never yet. In fact, if we do, we're supposed to call security.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Wow. Yeah, that really insulates you from the possibility of even
definitely
encountering a stranger.
No, definitely not. Anyway, what was I gonna say? Yeah. So basically, there were also some comments from some other people around Brian Wilson about whether or not everything Melinda said was completely accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically, like, his daughter kind of compared her to Eugene Landy.
Yeah.
Basically saying that, like, basically implying that, like, you know, she was in control of him now or whatever.
Right, it was just like she has the exact same motivations, basically like what Landy is saying at the end of the movie.
Yeah, once again, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean,
that's totally.
It just, I think that there's a lack of information here, and I think that it's kind of hard to. It's hard to know if you're being completely truthful when you make a movie like this.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those things like no one's necessarily saying that she's fucking lying about anything.
I'm not saying that she is either. I'm just.
It's just that as you say, it can be.
It's a lot of information that can't be corroborated
and
from one source.
Could be like her motivations being the same as Landy's is not outlandish. You know, like that's not an obscene thing to suggest.
Exactly.
Someone could do that, and you know, it wouldn't be totally weird for, like, you know, if someone put all the work into, you know, freeing this person from that shitty scenario. It's like either A, they care about them, or B, they want their money. So it's not that weird to ask the question.
Once again, we're not making any allegations
here. That's literally
like,
what I'm saying. It's like that's why it's not weird to ask the question, because it's one of those two options.
Yeah.
And this movie portrays it like it's the first one, and you know, most cases point, and it's never black and white, but most cases point to that he's a lot better off now.
Yeah, it would definitely appear that way.
And that's unfortunately the truth has failed us in that regard, is that
we didn't find the truth.
In that regard, we didn't. We found out that the film is accurate, but we don't fucking know
Yeah, more or less. And according to Brian, it's somewhat accurate, but, you know,
Yeah.
he's not always the most reliable person
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I feel like Brian's
Yeah.
like, Brian, I don't know if we're ever going to get.
Well, I feel like Brian is sort of vulnerable to manipulation, as it were.
Yeah. I don't know if we're ever going to get.
Yeah.
I think Brian's far down the rabbit hole. I don't know if we're ever going to get a truly
Yeah, exactly.
clear story from Brian.
No, I don't really think
But
so.
I just hope he's
Um,
happy, man. He's just, that's all
Yeah,
we
I
want.
hope he seems better, I guess.
Yeah, he seems better off. He's not getting improper prescription of drugs.
No, definitely not. That's definitely a very important.
That's good. So we have
improvement, yeah.
one last little note before we go off on this movie.
Yeah, so one thing I did mention this before is that this movie really wanted to focus on Eugene
Yeah.
Landy, right? And why he was, a bad guy. But, I think in the process, it kind of, lessened the impact of noted bad guy Mike Love.
Yeah, noted shitty guy Mike Love. Yeah, Mike Love sucks.
And, actually, so, where this movie ended is, I think the villain of Brian's life actually ceased to be Eugene Landy and began to be Mike Love.
Exactly. Which is,
Because shortly after this movie, there was a lawsuit between Brian and Mike.
yeah, well, do you care to go into that?
Yeah, let me talk about it a little bit. But basically, Mike Love claimed that he should have got credits on a bunch of shit.
Basically like songwriting credits. Basically like the whole Robbie Robertson, Levon Helm band situation as well.
Credit, yeah, he tried to get credit on some songs so that he could get more royalties, even though, Mike Love was Mike Love seemed like he was doing all right at this time, He had his fake Beach Boys,
just a money move, power move. Money grab.
Who knows how much Mike Love actually wrote. My guess is, based on what I've heard, that he has actually wrote not much of the good stuff.
Yeah, like maybe he had a few ideas, but it's kind of like, have you heard Levon Helm's original songs?
No, you should probably explain what this is about, because I don't think that many people are that familiar with the situation with the band.
Well, I don't want to get too far into it because it's not that related. It's just a similar situation with a different band where one person...
A band's called The
where
Band.
one person gets all the songwriting credits and one other person in the band disagrees with how that goes. But, when one person, in this case, Brian Wilson, is literally the person who, writes everything down and is, in the studio doing it, then that's how you get your name on the...
Yeah, when one guy is literally in Japan while all this
exactly.
is happening.
So, I don't know. Don't get me wrong. People get shafted in that biz all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, no,
and I'm
definitely.
sure to a degree he
Yeah.
probably wasn't getting the credit he deserved in some cases, but ultimately, you're fucking suing Brian Wilson.
And then he also wrote Kokomo and didn't invite Brian to be part of it.
Yeah, he wrote, and then he bragged about it.
Yeah, and he bragged about his #1 hit, Kokomo, which was a shitty song.
Yeah, he wrote Kokomo, and it was like, Brian didn't help at all, and look at Brian's record is not doing very well.
Yeah, this is around the same time Brian was doing his
So it
record.
was like he called out Brian for not selling very well, and he was like, "Look at how great our Beach Boys record is doing." It's like, "Fuck you, Mike Love."
Yeah, I know. And then he also ruined the Beach Boys Rock and Roll Hall of Fame
Well,
induction.
we've mentioned that already. He in two ways. First of all, he interrupted Brian in the middle of his speech, and then he goes on some weird ass rant, just like.
Now, a lot of people are going to go out of this room tonight thinking that Mike Love is crazy. Well, they've been saying that for years.
About Mick Jagger
Yeah.
and something.
And there's something so funny about being like, yeah, Mick Jagger's too chicken shit to get on stage with the Beach Boys.
I know Mick Jagger won't be here tonight. He's going to have to stay in England. But I'd like to see us in the Coliseum and he in Wembley Stadium because he's always been chicken shit to get on stage with the Beach Boys.
Yeah, that's a great insult.
Such a great
Yeah,
insult.
I think Mick Jagger is fine with that. I don't think he's too disturbed by
Yeah, you really
that.
think fucking Mick Jagger gives two fucking shits about Mike Love? Like,
No,
I
I don't
doubt
think
he knows
so.
who Mike Love is.
I mean, he probably does know who Mike Love
I don't
is.
know.
mean, he probably knows who the Beach Boys are, obviously.
I'm sure he knows who the Beach Boys are. I don't know that he knows who Mike Love is.
All right.
We should find out.
I'm sure they've met. What was I going to say? Also, okay, but this isn't the end of it. Like, Mike Love, basically, the biggest dumb thing that he's ever done is make the fake Beach Boys.
Yeah,
which is essentially, because right now, like, any performance that is under the name of the Beach Boys is actually not the Beach Boys, it's Mike Love and friends.
Yeah, well, what do they do? They had, like, a reunion concert. And then basically, I don't really understand this, but something about how the legal...
I don't understand how Mike Love ended up with the,
Yeah, but like maybe it had something to do with the lawsuit. Like maybe he got to use the name.
Yeah, or maybe he got Brian to sign it over, like, by manipulating him.
Yeah, like maybe. Like, honestly, who the fuck knows?
Like,
point being is Mike Love
Yeah.
ended up with the rights to the Beach Boys name, so he just kicked them all out of the band after doing it. He did a reunion tour to drum up hype, and then kicked out all the actual
Yeah.
Beach Boys.
Yeah, and so now, the Beach Boys is in fact the only member of the touring band that calls itself the Beach Boys is in fact Mike Love. He also used that fucking touring band to go play at, like, some Trump
Yeah, he tried
benefits
to
and
use
shit
it as-
like that, which, by the way, is something that Brian and Al Jardine, the surviving members of the Beach Boys at this point, I think, were
Yeah,
very
they were
not
happy
down
about it.
with.
They were not down.
Yeah, I mean, And it's like, yeah, to use the Beach Boys name in, like, so politically, in, like, it's not even the fucking Beach Boys is the thing. You're like faking yourself as being the Beach Boys when really you're just like fucking Mike Love's vanity project. It's just stupid.
It's so stupid. Yeah, fuck Mike Love.
Yeah, fuck Mike Love. Don't go to a Beach Boys concert. Go to a Brian Wilson concert.
Exactly. If you want to hear Beach Boys music, go to a Brian Wilson concert.
I don't know. Is he allowed
and
to
see
play
the-
Beach? I mean, he probably is because he did.
Yeah,
right?
I'm sure he's allowed
Yeah.
to play.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's got the rights to play.
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
or not
So,
he
yeah.
owns it.
Go see Brian Wilson because, like,
Because he's still. And if you've watched any of his recent performances, he's still got a voice.
yeah, he does. Yeah,
For a guy in his late 70s, early 80s now.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
But anyway, Mike Love's just a fucking dick.
yeah. So the point of this is fuck Mike Love.
He's trying to take credit for all the fucking Beach Boys' success, and he was so mean to Brian when Brian was trying to do new music, and and then he tries to take credit for that music that you didn't want to happen in the first
yeah,
place.
he's
You know
just
what I
a
mean?
fucking jerk. Yeah, exactly. Just a little fucking jerk. We don't like him.
Yeah,
He's not a friend of the podcast, but he is invited on to
yeah. To
defend himself.
yeah, I'm not sure how well.
Well, he's
would do
invited
that, but
at
we'll
the very
see.
least to have a fist fight with you, and we'll record it. We'll record the audio.
Yeah. The audio. Well, yeah, we'll record the audio of the fist fight and put it on our Smile album.
Yeah, well then we'll send it to Brian Wilson.
Yeah,
This is for you.
Brian Wilson. We thought you would enjoy
It's
this.
an audio recording of me fighting Mike Love.
Yeah.
I think you might like that. But
I think you
yeah.
would.
Anyway, that's this episode. That's this week's episode. We've gone for a while now, so we'll get out of here.
Yeah, we'll just anyway. So yeah, final thoughts.
Yeah,
Final thoughts here.
So yeah, I think this movie is enjoyable. And I think after
I think this movie is enjoyable if you know and like the Beach Boys.
yeah.
And also if you do know and like the Beach Boys, you might also
It's
find
that
it
weird
infuriating.
combination. It's one of those music. It's more about, in my opinion at least, this movie's more about the fact that since I've been watching it, I've been on a Beach Boys kick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I think the biggest strength of this movie is that, it gets you into the Beach Boys. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It just portrays the Beach Boys story in an interesting way.
But that said, I think that as a movie, this movie, like, falls short in a number of aspects.
Yeah, it's not the best movie, and it could be better. There's a lot of ways you could make it a better movie, but it's a fine romp.
If you like the Beach Boys, you might find this film interesting. Might be worth a watch. I don't know. There are a lot of movies I would watch instead of this, but you know. All right. So yeah, so we'll be back next week with a special holiday episode. Yeah, it's getting around that time of year. But yeah, we'll see you next week. So shout out to all our listeners in Poland.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long? And wouldn't it be nice to live together in the kind of world where we belong? You know it's gonna make it that much better when we can say goodnight and stay together. Wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up in the morning when the day is new? After having spent the day together, hold each other close the whole night through. What happy times together we'd be spending. I wish that every kiss was never ending. Oh, wouldn't it be nice? Maybe if we think and wish and hope and pray it might come true. Run, run, will, baby, then there wouldn't be a single thing we couldn't do. But we could be married, and then we'd be happy, and then we'd be happy. Oh, wouldn't it be nice? You know it seems the more we talk about it, it only makes it worse to live.